Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from John. I just recently got into your videos and I'm very grateful for the new music you've introduced me to. In the honor of the recent passing of the great Doug Engle, I'd love to hear your reaction and analysis to In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida by Iron Butterfly. Very psychedelic. So, that's what we have going on today. This is a very iconic track. I've never heard the full thing. I know the da 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 da, like that main riff, that main melody that we have. And I do have Reverend Lovejoy stuck in my head going, I believe this is rock and or roll from The Simpsons, when Bart made the church play this song. But that's about all I know about the track. Other than the fact it's like 17 minutes and is very iconic for its length. Let's dive into this and see what Iron Butterfly is bringing to the table today. Everybody really in on this, except the bass is using staccato notes instead of legato for the final few notes.
Don't you know that I'm loving you? In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, baby. Don't you know that I'll always be true? Oh, won't you come with me and I'll take my hand?
I kind of wish this wasn't the remaster. There's something really awkward about the vocals, the production on them. Very interesting melody choice for that as well, the run on hands.
Don't you know that I'm loving you?
There's cool volume dynamics on the vocals, but it's presented in a really awkward way that doesn't feel natural. And again, I think it's the remaster. The guitar over here intermittently cutting out, allowing the organ to lead, or to interject, I should say. Yeah, they changed key for that what, 2 bars before coming back into this. I'm not a huge fan of the hard panning on the drums to the right. I think it's just something of its time now. I know this is very early. 68. Yep, organ vamping over there under the guitar solo. Pretty typical. Every once in a while, the guitar shows up on the right channel too. It's very distracting. Getting a lot of mileage out of these 3 notes. It's tough to say if those are accidents or not. There's been a couple of portions in the guitar solo where we've had muted notes, muted hits that feel like they shouldn't have been there. The note that I kind of heard at the beginning of the pluck feels like it was a natural movement. The rhythmic stop didn't really make a lot of sense. Oh, jeez. It's a very segmented drum solo. I can't say I hear too many like this. It's quickly becoming apparent to me I shouldn't approach this like a rock song. It's a jam session. The closest analogy is probably going to end up being a jazz track. And y'all know how I feel about recorded jazz tracks. Yeah, I love the ornamental work around the core melody here. Ooh. So we took that melody we had earlier and removed the tension on that third chord and instead gave it an uplift instead, creating a variation on it. That's quite a volume jump. Randomly bringing in hymn progressions. Ooh, dissonance in there too. Bringing back the old riff isn't working with this new chord progression. Very interesting production here too. Randomly tossing in some Phrygian dominant. last bass section was kind of neat. The walking bass line was a nice transition. This is the one that I thought was kind of neat. The walking line was a nice change of pace.
In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, honey, don't you know that I'm loving you? In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, baby, don't you know that I've always been true? Oh, won't you come with me and take my hand? Oh, won't you come with me and we'll walk this line? Please take my hand. Hup, hup.
This is a neat little variation on the theme. Did the bassist not get the memo the song was over? The organ went in a totally different direction for that penultimate moment. The guitar didn't come in on that beat one, but the bass did with the first note of the riff that they've been playing for 17 minutes. Yeah, that's... Alright, if you're new here, this place is called Critical Reactions. The tagline is critical, not cynical. I try not to just be mean for mean's sake, but that doesn't mean that I am afraid to speak about things that I didn't enjoy. I try my best to find positive things, and I try to praise what definitely needs praise, but if you're somebody who doesn't like listening to criticism about something that they love, you might just want to back out of this video right here. I don't usually give this disclosure, but this is a very popular, iconic song, and it was not my cup of tea at all, and I'm having a real tough time finding another perspective of enjoyment of it. I do want to preface this before we move on, though, that I am also listening to this almost 60 years after it came out. Like 55, 56. I'm missing context. I'm missing the context of its release. What else was going on at this time? What was the world of psych rock like in 1968? Did we have anything like this around at the time? Was this mind-blowing and groundbreaking, and is that what has caused it to have such an aura around it historically? I'm coming at this with 20-24 ears of somebody who grew up on classical radio rock and jazz and wasn't introduced to psychedelic music until, honestly, this decade. If I say anything you don't agree with, or that I'm completely wrong on, again, I'm missing context, so I might misspeak here. I always encourage good conversation in the comments. If there's a moment for me to learn something, I'm all ears. But the minute things start getting derogatory, mean, insults being thrown around, I am not afraid of removing those comments. So, civil discourse. I want all of that in the comments. Okay, jumping into this. I do want to start with the positive. That's where I typically like to start with these things. The riff is super catchy. Everything about this song. I mean, here's the thing, right? I said I've never heard the song other than on like an old Simpsons episode that I probably watched in the 90s, and yet that lick is still stuck in my head. I can very clearly hear the guitars and the vocals on this. I didn't know the bass and organ also played the lick. We're going to get into that in a second because I like what they're doing with that. But yeah, the last time I heard this that I know of, I was probably single digit age, maybe early tens, early teens, latest. And that whole scene is just stuck in my head. The organ, the piano playing in the church, Reverend Lovejoy with a rock and or roll line, and of course the music. I strongly think that the A section here is phenomenal. As far as being a mainstream track with the appeal to break into the mainstream conversation and stand the test of time. There is a reason that this song is still talked about today, and I strongly think it's the A section. It's catchy, it's groovy, it's iconic, it feels both of its age and it hasn't really aged too well. There's definitely some things in here that I think are very of its time, and some things that I think aren't of its time but got screwed up in the remaster. And there's another bit of context I don't have. I haven't heard the original. I don't know what of the things that I didn't like of the production actually were part of the original and what weren't. But I do strongly think that the verse and the chorus of this are very strong. I also generally liked the B section, parts of it at least. There were some really cool licks in there, some really cool ideas. I mentioned at that one point that the guitarist was getting a lot of mileage out of a little bit of notes. He played for like a minute off of just 3 or 4 pitches. And it was really impressive how expressive it ended up being and how it wasn't really boring. There was actually a lot of movement through there, utilizing things other than pitch to manipulate the melody. There was a couple of bass lines that I enjoyed towards the end of the song. The organ has a really cool sense of harmony. I can't say I was a really big fan of their melodic playing, but the harmonies that they paired with their solos were interesting and they explored some areas I wasn't really expecting. The drums, they were okay. I'm probably going to catch flack for that one. I don't think there was anything bad about the drums. They just weren't my cup of tea. The drum solos were a bit focused on repetition of segmented concepts rather than creating a fluid melodic idea. Much like the bass, guitar, and organs did with their solos was craft a narrative, the drums found a bunch of cool rhythms to play over and over and over. That's just not what I like to hear in my drum solos. Some of the rhythms themselves were interesting. I liked when we finally got up to a pace and groove by the end of the solo and how that built into and transitioned into that next part. But I found a lot of the drum solo to be just okay. And then the transitions from 12 minutes into the song until the end, pulling the core motif, the core riff into the solo section, starting a solo with it before expanding past it in the guitar, bringing back the core riff in the bass to act as foundation under the solo, and then pulling this all back into the core A section, bringing us back into our final verse and chorus. I thought all of that worked really well. The transitions were smooth. So there is a lot to love about this track. There's a lot of great ideas in here. Unfortunately, to me, that's what this is, though. It's a lot of ideas. It never really coalesces into anything that I find to be cohesive. It just feels too fragmented to me. For instance, we have our three A sections. I think they work really well, but in between that, we have this really long B section, which is a big jam, which really has nothing to do with the rest of the track. I had mentioned that I kind of need to approach this more like a jazz song than a rock song, and this is why. In jazz, we have the core lick, the melody that everyone's going to be able to hum. That's our A, and then an A, and then our solo section, which is our B, and our different soloists are going to take time passing the baton and doing different solos, and then we return back to the A to wrap the track up. But the thing is, if you listen to really good jazz musicians, not just, I mean, yeah, you might find some really good amateurs too, but I'm talking about the professionals, the well-known names. They're going to be adapting their solo writing to the song. The way that they solo on one track is going to be very different from another track, even if they're within the same subgenre of jazz. And it's because they're going to be incorporating parts of the A section into it. They're also going to be utilizing the chord progression of the song to influence how they play as well. There's a lot of elements that it's not just, hey, it's my turn to write whatever I want. No, there's still constraints on it based on the song. We don't really get that with In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, though. The chord progression completely changes in the song after we hit like 7 or 8 minutes into this, after the drum solo. Because before that, we were using the same da 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 as the foundation for everybody's solo section. So that did fit in rather well. But then we get the drums, and after the drums come in and have their solo section, all bets are off. We have so many chordal shifts and key changes here. And none of it really fits back to the A section. We don't bring back rhythms, we don't bring back motifs, we don't play with any of that. We've basically entered into a brand new song at this point in the track. It almost sounds like they wrote this A section, they went into the studio one day, they were playing it, and they just got carried away. And that was their song. And I don't think that's a bad way to make music, but it certainly isn't always going to create fantastic things. That's the thing about a jam session, is it's all improvised. Sometimes you're going to write genius level stuff, sometimes it's going to be okay. And here, I don't feel any crossover between them. It feels like a totally different song. Is it poorly written? No. Is it poorly played? No. It's fine. It just doesn't fit the A section. And this is an issue I have with jam bands in general. It really takes an amount of focus, understanding, and experience in order to say, okay, we're just going to play whatever comes to mind and have it fit with the structured parts of the song. This is what I just mentioned is the big difference between your amateur jazz players and your professionals. This is that experience that helps you elevate your game. I just don't feel that here. I really don't. This feels like, again, they were just jamming out. It was fine, I just don't know why it was recorded. And this kind of goes down to some of the smaller parts, too. Some of the solo sections, lovely, enjoyable stuff. Others, they're a little rough. Some of it I just didn't really care for much at all, like the first quarter of the drum solo. It's very hit and miss, and it ends up making the song feel like it drags on. I was really, really, really waiting for the A section to come back, hopefully, around the 10-minute mark, especially around the drum solo. I was like, okay, has this devolved into just jamming? Some of these are good. And I was just like, okay, where are we going with this? We're not going anywhere, though. We're just exploring the space, and that's, again, fine. It's just not my cup of tea. I've said this on other jam videos too. As a musician, 100%, I love jamming. It is a blast, whether it is 100% the best stuff I've ever written, or if I'm just having an off night, it doesn't matter. I'm enjoying being in the music in that moment. There's something about musical expression, not using words or body language, dance, but sound, utilizing the muscles I have to create noise out of instruments or my vocals or just percussion hitting my chest or something, and making something that's groovy and enjoyable with other people. It is just a blast. But I also appreciate that not everything I do in my jams is something other people are going to like. It's very different to witness a jam than to be in one. And this definitely feels to me like they were probably having a blast. They walked away from this, they said, that was awesome, loved every moment of it. But for me, as an audience, it really feels like it was music for them, not for me. And that's where I sit on basically that whole solo section. It's fine, but it just doesn't grab me and it doesn't fit the rest of the track. Now I do want to jump back to a bit of praise. 50-50 maybe. There are a lot of chordal shifts in here. At the end of the chorus, I mentioned that the walk down on the vocals when they're holding out the word hands was interesting. That's because it deviates quite a bit from the chord structure that we've laid out to that point, which is honestly only 2 chords, which I'm going to talk on in a second, but we enter a third chord in here that isn't an expansion of the 2. It's in a new key. It introduces some new tones and textures. It gets a little spicy. It's an interesting walk down. We actually see quite a bit of this into the solo section as well. The organist loves to bring in extra chords all over the place. It seems to be their favorite thing. They seem to have a really strong grasp of chord theory in some capacity. It's interesting choices they're making. Not the usual ones I would expect, but they tend to be coherent. We rarely have any sort of dissonance or clashing tones coming in. So, like I said, at least on some level, they understand what they're doing. I don't know if they're classically trained or not, but sometimes you just get people who just have that gut instinct for music, right? We had a Phrygian dominant mode come in out of nowhere towards the end of the song. No lead up, no foreshadowing, wasn't represented anywhere else in the track. We just had 8 bars of Phrygian dominant from the organ again. And then we had a different chord progression come in that kind of sounded like hymns, and then we brought in the core lick, the A section lick underneath that, and we did have clashing there. The foundation for the end of the solo section did not really fit well with our A, and this is another piece of evidence that the B and the A just aren't really compatible with each other. They're very different pieces of music. So I enjoy the variety of sounds here. I think spice is really nice in music, and there were some cool places in here. It's like, oh, that was a neat little direction to go. But it also never really felt cohesive. Again, it was more of, it sort of felt experimental in a way. Should we go here? And we try it out. It kind of works. We'll stick with it. It doesn't feel like something that was expressly done for a narrative reason, for an artistic reason. It was experimentation for experimentation's sake, as far as I can tell. And they're neat. But they, again, kind of don't fit. Now, I will say that a few of them made it iconic, especially the 2 chordal shifts in the A section. Without them, I think it would have been a bit more of a mundane riff, a mundane lick. It would not have become as iconic, and the song would have really rested on how well the B section resonated with the audience. It is those odd twists that give the A section its unique feeling. So I don't want to really take those away, but there's quite a few in the B section that just made me think, wow, that was weird, but what are you doing with it? And then they don't do anything with it, so it kind of feels inconsequential. I suppose the last thing I need to bring up, well, contrast, there just isn't a lot. We had like 9 minutes of the same bass riff, and it's only 2 chords back and forth, and yeah, just, I need a little bit more from my foundation, I think. And this is another thing where I like to pair it back to jazz. The rhythm section, their job is to keep time and provide the chord progression. Sometimes if you have a piano who wants to do it or an electric guitar, usually you'll get vamping. And so short little da-da, da, those little offbeat accent chords. We heard a lot of that in here too. Remember when I said, oh, the organ's up to vamping now. Yeah, you just hit a chord, you get a nice little rhythmic element out of it. You're not really trying to take up too much space. You're just filling in a little bit of musical information. But that's not just their job, is to provide rhythm and chord progression. They're there to hold a conversation with your soloist. The best bands are going to have adaptation in the rhythm section. They're going to be just as adaptive and improvisational as your lead soloist is. Maybe not so much in the spotlight, but if your soloist leans into a rhythm, you know your drummer's picking that up. He's going to start incorporating it into his work. You know, when you start playing a little spicy, your bass player is going to start incorporating some of those into their chord progression, into their walking bass line. It is a conversation, not a bunch of background noise for a solo, but that's what this tends to feel like for me. Everybody's background noise when someone else is soloing, and there is no conversation. There is just heavy repetition. No modulation, no variation. Play the same thing over and over. And I feel so bad for the bassist. Maybe we're two different people, right? Maybe they were completely happy with it. But that is not my idea of a fun time, is to play the same two bars over and over for 17 minutes. They did get some variation towards the end, but again, it wasn't an expanded idea. It was just a new repetition. So, oh, wait, there is one thing that I want to speak positively about, and it's the core riff, right? And I mentioned at the beginning the bass kicks in, then the guitar kicks in, then the organ kicks in. Maybe those were reversed, I don't remember. And I was like, oh, cool. You know, they're all doing the same thing. I didn't realize that. I knew the vocals also had this melody as well, but I didn't know everyone else did. But here's the cool thing, is that they're all playing like 70% the same thing, but there's small little variations in them. There's some harmonic differences between the organ and the guitar. There's rhythmic differences between the bass and everyone else, where they have the walking down is da 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 da. Actually, that comes down and goes back up. But the bass goes bump, 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 puts the staccato punch in there where everybody else is using a legato playing. I think that's really nice. The vocalist also puts a lot of runs between notes and ends up slurring notes a little bit more together, which creates an even more legato feel to it, but also has embellishment put in there. The guitar's tone is meaty and crunchy. The organ has the wave to it. The bass is punchy and full. And the vocals are kind of... There's a lot of air in the vocal delivery. So we actually have quite a bit of timbre difference as well, and note delivery difference too. I really like this. It allows so much personality to come through when on paper we just have four instruments pretty much playing the same thing. And it ends up feeling quite diverse and dynamic despite the similar writings for all the parts. That is certainly a bit of praise I think they deserve, and it is another reason why I think the A section is as good as it is and why it has stood the test of time. There's so many small decisions that really elevate the A section. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on this final bit before we head into the lyrics, but the production on here is wonky, and again, I have no idea if that is the remaster or the original. Some of it probably is the original. The dual channel staging, there really isn't too much of a center presence here. The drums are pushed hard off to the right. I'm not a fan of that at all. There was one part where the drums were being panned around. Subjectively, I'm not a fan of that, but it is kind of neat, and I'm sure that back in '68 that was probably a pretty cool effect. But yeah, just like instrument placement and the hard left-right panning, probably a product of its time. I'm not a big fan of. But there is more elements in here that I would say are a bit more objective. There are some really strange volume jumps in the vocals, particularly on the word gotta, which tends to have a really big punchy impact on that first syllable. it tends to pierce through at a volume a hair bit louder than everything else, and it almost feels like some sort of AI oversight. Being that this is a 2006 remaster, I'm not thinking it was AI remastered, but it does sound like one of those weird things that a program would do that a human never would. It isn't even a gradual rise up into it. It is a stepwise thing where the volume's around here and then Ga-Da-Da-Vida, and it's just, it sticks out in a very strange way. And we actually hear this all over the place on the vocals. The volume leveling on all of it is wildly inconsistent. We hear a little bit on the guitar and organ solos too, but I don't think as much to of an extent as we saw on the vocals. And I think this is definitely a remaster issue. It got me thinking about something though. They probably don't have a multi-track recording of this, do they? So any remaster is going to have to be hand remastered of the flattened version, so to speak. I'm curious if we could use, I know we have AI programs out there to isolate instruments. I don't know how good they are, but I have seen software like that. And I'm curious if we could use that to create stems for each of the instruments and then remaster it in a modern staging. Put the drum and bass center with the vocals on top, the guitar and organ out to the side, but not hard panned, probably about 40 to 60%, so there's still a little bleed over to the middle as well, and create a very modern sound stage for this track. I'm not going to say that that would be better by any means. I am a huge proponent of trying to retain as much of an original sound when you're remaking or remastering or porting or whatever an older artwork to the modern day, but I also would like to experiment with that and see if that would increase any of my engagement with the song. Just having it in a more modern sound. It would be no different than what I think would be like AI upscaling to 4K of films that might have been recorded at standard definition or something. Where, yeah, there's going to be some weird inconsistencies in places that maybe a modern audience won't notice, but an older one definitely would, especially if they've seen the original source material. But I think would be a good way of introducing a new audience to older art. As long, of course, that the original is still available, which I think is my biggest issue with many of these remasters coming out, is that at least on Spotify, the originals are replaced by the remaster, and that's what happened here. So I'm not too happy with that. I would like to have been given a chance to hear a high-quality version of the original to know if any of my issues with some of the production were there originally or not. Anyways, I'm rambling and getting quite a bit off the topic of Iron Butterfly at this point. So, let's go check out some lyrics for this and see what's up. There really aren't a lot of lyrics to this. I think the song, as much as I like the vocal delivery in the A section, these lyrics don't really say much. I don't think they're adding much to the track at all. We just have a repetition of In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, I love you, and I'll always be true. And that's it, over and over and also alternated with won't you come and take my hand, won't you come and walk this land. And that's the whole song. In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida is, I didn't know this originally, when I think it was in that Simpsons skit, and they put on the hymn in the Garden of Eden, but it's actually what the song was originally going to be called, according to this annotation here. But that one of the members got a little tongue-tied and said In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida instead, and they're like, we're sticking with it. And so, yeah, this song is about being in the Garden of Eden with somebody, and just always being true and loving to them. Maybe. Here's the thing. It's a question, right? Don't you know that I'm always loving you? Don't you know that I'll always be true? Part of me kind of wants to read those as gaslighting. I don't want to say that that's what the song is about. But it's odd to question them. However, at the same time, this was written in the late 60s, and language and conversation were very different then. So, like everything else, I'm just missing the context of the time, approaching it with modern ears and eyes. But yeah, that's the whole song. Being in love with someone, and yeah, I guess that's it. I have no way to relate this back to the song at all. It just feels like some words that they kind of went along with the sick guitar line. And that's how I would wager this came along too. Somebody came up with the core motif, maybe the organ player, maybe the bass, maybe the guitar. I mean, everybody does it. It's hard to say where it might have originated from. And everyone else, okay, I'll play that. I'll play that. And vocalist is like, oh, I got some words for that. And I'm like, all right. And then jam session. It's kind of wild because it really doesn't feel like a lot of thought went into the A section, but sometimes the best songs are done that way. It's just so good from the ground up. The foundation is just so solid, and it just makes so much sense to them that they just do it. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I just lost followers. These are my thoughts on Iron Butterflies and In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Put your thoughts, opinions, comments, perspectives all down in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of this song. Let me know what you thought about my analysis of it. Yeah, I'm catching flack for this one. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to check out our full album. Sunday, we have the live stream at 11 a.m. EST, and Monday, we'll be back with the usual stuff at 5 p.m. EST. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.